What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to this Week 4 episode of Fantasy Factor. We have a very exciting show planned for you today as we bring you our first ad drop segment of the year and results of our last week's fantasy matchup. However, before we get to that, Matt, why don't you get us started with a recap of last week's picks?
I'll be honest with you, Mike. I was really hoping the Pats could pick it up and win in the second half to take the game. However, the Patriots just did not look good on either side of the ball. Gagnon Smith had a couple key drops, and even once the offense picked it up in the second half, it wasn't enough. The defense looked shaky too, which makes me nervous for next week against the Bucs. I still have faith in the Pats, but they need to do a lot more to even think of beating the Buccaneers this weekend. The game between the Rams and the Bucs was one that I also guessed incorrectly last week. I figured it would be a tight game, but that the Bucs would take it. Alas, the Rams defense was stellar, in addition to Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp acting like a young Tom Brady and Randy Moss. I'm happy to see Stafford is doing well in Los Angeles. He deserves it after what I think was wasting a career in Detroit.
All right, tough week, Matt. I fared slightly better than you did last week, going 1-2 on my picks. Perhaps it's only because I'm not a Pats fan and I can pick against the Patriots. The Patriots suffered a pretty tough loss against the Saints, 28-13. I would say I got this pick pretty straight on. I said Jameis was going to be good, and he proved to be too much for the Pats defense, throwing for 13-21, 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. Well, those numbers aren't eye-popping. We're used to seeing him produce a lot more, but he is very, very efficient now, looking better than throwing 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions this year. And additionally, on the other side of the ball, Mac Jones really struggled, throwing a whopping 51 times, completing 30 of them for 270 yards, a touchdown, and 3 interceptions. No matter what team you play for, it's hard to win games when you throw 3 interceptions and your starting running back only gains 14 yards. And now, moving on to the Rams-Bucs game, I don't think anyone outside of LA and maybe St. Louis saw the Rams winning this game. But hats off to Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp for playing outstanding. Stafford threw for 343 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, while Kupp caught 9 of those for 96 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Rams defense also got in on the action, sacking Brady 3 times and forcing 2 fumbles. It took an all-around effort for the Rams to defeat the Bucs, but hats off to them. They got it done winning 34-24. And so now, Matt, let's move on to a quick recap of our start and sit picks from last week.
Well, Mike, the fans aren't going to be too happy about this one. I promise I'm going to get better. But Gronk last week did not do better than George Kittle. San Fran almost took the win against Green Bay with big help from Kittle, who had his first Kittle-esque season of the game of the season. Good for him. On the other hand, you never know who's getting the ball when Brady is throwing. Gronk had a good start to the game, and in my defense, he probably would have had another good game had he not gotten hit hard and injured midway through. He took a shot to the chest and had to get x-rays on his ribs. He'll be fine to play against the Patriots, I think, but the second half definitely was tough for him of last game as he struggled to get separation from his defender. Definitely, though, not a great pick. I apologize again. Please don't lose hope in me. I will get some picks right, I promise.
Matt, I'm going to have to give you another 3 out of 10 for your picks last week, as Kittle had nearly double the points that Gronk did, 9.5 compared to 17.1. In turn, I would say I had another week of decent picks. I told our viewers to start Terry McLaurin, who had an okay game, 4 catches and 62 yards for 10.2 points. Certainly not horrible, but not as good as he played in week 2. However, my sit pick of the week is where I earned my paycheck. Not that we get paid, but you get the idea. I said to bench the Buccaneers defense, which was seemingly the right call, as playing them would have gotten you negative 3 points, as they got torched by Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Now I'll pass it back to you, Matt, for the first ad drop segment of the year.
First, Mike, I'd like to rate your pick a 6.5 out of 10. Saying the Bucs defense was big and definitely a good idea, but Terry McLaurin had a decent game. I think he was a bit below average for a wide receiver 1 to 2. I think the only reason you didn't get a little higher score from me was because you told the viewers to start a wide receiver instead of defense. The positions didn't align, and it just kind of confused me. That's just my opinion. Now let's transition to ad drop. My ad of the week is Hunter Renfrow of the Las Vegas Raiders. The wideout has had a great 3 first games of the season, probably in part to Derek Carr leading the league in passing yards right now. He's only 26% rostered in ESPN leagues. I'd pick this guy up and hope that he continues increasing at the pace that he is. Next, my drop of the week. If you don't have the roster room, I'm going to say David Johnson. He's on the Texans right now, and he's just not getting the touches that a fantasy running back should be getting. Honestly, none of the Texans running backs are. Johnson scoring so low is weird to see, considering that he was a fantasy number 1 overall pick 2 to 3 years ago. But right now, it's just looking like the former fantasy all-star is not getting the touches he needs, especially competing with Mark Ingram and Phillip Lindsay. If you have the roster space, keep him for another week maybe to see how the Texans start running the ball more and see if he starts doing better. But if you have to be adding someone, I'd say Johnson might have to be the next to go. How about you, Mike?
So first of all, I'd say it's a fair score, Matt. I was trying to spice things up a little bit, not go position for position. But now my ad of the week, I had Josh Gordon. Yes, I know he has a tendency to get reinstated into the league and then get kicked out weeks later. But it's just so tempting because you know the kind of talent he has and just how good he can be. As a quick reminder, in his second season in the NFL, Gordon racked up 1,600 receiving yards, so go along with 9 touchdown catches. Well, that was 8 years ago. I just get so excited when I see Josh Gordon on the football field. And to add, he got signed by the Chiefs, which will not only make the offense more unstoppable, but he will also be the 3rd or 4th option on that team. And I would say very comfortably that most 3rd and 4th best defenders are not going to be able to stay with Gordon. I expect this to be a very good signing for the Chiefs and for your fantasy team. So now onto my drop of the week is the former Ohio State, now 49ers running back, Trey Sermon. I expected him to have a much bigger role in the 49ers offense, especially with the absence of Raheem Mostert. Sermon is currently 3rd on the Niners in terms of carries behind Mitchell and Jimmy G with 11 carries. And on those carries, he only managed 39 yards and a touchdown through the first 3 games. While it might not be bad for 2nd, 3rd string running back early on in the season, I was expecting much more production out of him. And for those reasons, I'm out. Matt, why don't you tell our viewers how our fantasy matchup went last week?
Gladly, Mike. I heard so many little chirps out of Buckeye here for being 2-0, and I was 1-1. For week 3, my team finally pulled through, and Mike scored way less than the first 2 weeks, to be fair, and won, handing Mike his first loss of the season.
Gotcha.
Still a long way to go, and I think we will play each other again. I certainly don't want to hear much from Mike if I lose late in the season, so I'll end with saying that I had a good week, Mike's team had a bad week, and I capitalized. Now we're both 2-1. Let's move on to our pick'em of the week. Mike, get us started with your thoughts on Pats versus Bucks.
All right, so my gut reaction is that somehow the Pats will find a way to win this game because they always seem to win the big ones. Maybe I'm thinking Brady will be overwhelmed emotionally in his return to New England. But the football fan in me who has seen Brady tear up teams for years with no regard for human emotion will say that I expect the Bucks to win rather easily and for Mac Jones to struggle against a very strong Bucks defense that went and added Richard Sherman. If I had to say a score, I would say the Bucks by a score of 49-24.
As much as I want to root for the Pats in this game, Mike, I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'm rooting for the Pats. I just don't know if I can pick them to win. Hopefully this is the reverse jinx somehow, and I'm helping the Pats by saying this. But the Bucks are a stacked roster who have looked good in all of their games, including the loss against the Rams. Not to mention they just picked up Richard Sherman, like you said, from free agency, and that can only help them. Now, do I think the Belichick will bring his A game? I do think that, and I do not think that this game is in any way decided right now. I just think that Brady will be more focused than ever playing in Gillette after a loss, playing against the team he built a legacy with. I want the Patriots to win, but I just feel like the Bucks will because of sheer talent. I believe in the Pats, but I don't want to seem irrationally biased either. I think the Bucks will win this close game, maybe a textbook Brady last-minute touchdown drive. I can't wait to watch. And with that, guys, I think it's time we wrap up the Week 4 episode of Fantasy Factor. Hopefully some of my picks are correct this week, Mike, but we shall see. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, I'm Matt. He's Mike. We'll see you next time.